welcome. To start this interview, I first will ask you what's your name and where are you now?
My name is Maria Clara Sepulveda de Faria. I'm in Rio. I'm in my apartment, my living room, which is my everything space, where we do everything and work, study, yoga, play, just everything. And I'm in Rio. I'm in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
And the next question is a little bit broad, but you can take it any way you want. Who are you as a person?
Yeah, that's a strange. It's a strange question. It can mean a lot of things. It can mean at different moments I'll be different things. I think I'm a woman, a daughter, a sister, a friend. I'm a nerd. I'm a big nerd. I love to read. Originally, professionally, I was a philosopher. I was a philosophy student, which is what I spent most of my adult life doing. I am a runner. I am a runner because I love it so much. Not really because I do it very well or very often, but I love it very much. I am a curious person. I'm very curious about strange things that people around me don't always understand. I'm often being asked, why are you reading that book? Why are you studying that thing? Why are you studying that language? Why? I tend to see it the other way around. Sometimes I'm reading something so fascinating that I start telling everybody, I look at this book and people just look, well, why are you reading this? Why are you not reading it? It's a fabulous, fantastic book. So I'd say I'm a very curious person. I am a psychotherapist in training, but in practice. In practice now for 2 years. Still a psychology student, a Gestalt therapy trainee. Yeah, maybe. There should be some.
I found it very interesting that when you were talking, you said I was a philosopher, and for the other things you said I am. And I'm wondering.
Yeah. Well, we don't really say I am a philosopher. It's a little bit of a strange. I'd say I'm a philosophy student. I have like the degree because it's like professionally. But I don't think I've ever, in a job, what is your work? You don't say that you're a philosopher. I don't think anybody that worked with me, that you're a philosophy student or you're a philosophy professor. We'll say that Schopenhauer and Hegel are philosophers, mere mortals living in the here and now. No, we're philosophy students. I'm a philosophy student. I spend a good deal of my time in philosophy, both reading and in my own brain. I have a very significant tendency to go into the very abstract problems, the problems that have no solutions, those problems that other people don't understand, why I'm obsessed with that specific problem. So I don't think that I was a philosopher. I think I've always been a philosophy student. And it is quite a significant part of my being a person.
And I'm curious, this is not part of the questions, but I have never asked you this. How does that inform your way of being in you're also doing psychotherapy?
Well, the philosophy was one of the reasons I moved to Gestalt, I think. it can be helpful and sometimes not so much. One of the things that we're trained to do in philosophy is like finding the problems in the arguments. where doesn't it work? You know, where does it not fit? That's not always helpful in psychology. The philosophy I studied was very much logical, very logic-based, very rationalistic. I studied ancient philosophy. I studied Spinoza, very, very rationalistic philosophy. The name of my graduate program is Logics and Metaphysics. So there's a lot of logic based in my in my graduate program. And in that way, it is very different from Gestalt. But it does make me see things from many angles, which is something sometimes unfortunately so as well. Sometimes I get lost with all the possibilities, but yeah, it is very much a part of, I'd say, being a philosophy student is very much a part of my being. The kind of questions that I ask myself and of the world and of the people around me are quite often very philosophical. I find funny sometimes people say that they're the questions that like go down the rabbit hole because they're the questions that don't have answers. One of the things I've always said, philosophers are fundamentally, or philosophy students, fundamentally stubborn people, because basically we're giving a lot of energy trying to answer questions that we know from the start we're not going to answer. You know, Plato and Aristotle were asking the same questions. They didn't answer them. You're not going to answer them. But still, if you spend all your time, it's like you're looking for answers that you kind of know you're not going to find. Yeah.
No, that made me curious. What is it that then you find, and it's not the answer to the question, but it's still somehow satisfactory?
Good arguments are always satisfactory. Just new possibilities, new ways of, because in psychology we look at different ways humans think of things, mostly today, right? How your clients are going to see the world, and then we'll think of their socioeconomic, gender, and how they're. But basically, philosophy has been thinking of ways of perceiving the world from not every, but many different angles of perception, of processing. So the possibility of interpreting reality in many ways are already a little bit have been worked through, and how sometimes you can have very good arguments for very different theses. Very good arguments, very brilliant metaphysical systems. It seems like, oh yeah, this is like a perfect, and then yeah, but is it, and then someone else will have a completely beautiful system as well, and it's the two don't match. They don't match, they don't fit. So yeah.
It sounds like philosophical intersubjectivity.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely gives me very open-minded about different ways of perceiving reality and thinking about everything.
I guess from what you were saying, what I hear is it gives you also an ability to hold different viewpoints and polarities, which is what often in psychotherapy we need to
do. It really does, and it also it can be frustrating. Sometimes I'm surprised by being able to see polarities that maybe I wouldn't want to. Sometimes I try to and I can't. I suspect that it might be there, but I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so in all of these endeavors you're having, and you mentioned many actually, what do you think are your values that you hold, and how do you hold them in your life?
I guess since I talked about being a nerd, and I'm a very I'm a very, very big nerd, and it's very much a part of my family. So I'd say knowledge is a value, I think, and curiosity was just something that I am just going after new information and whatever kind, not literal information. Now I'm trying to understand how dance can bring me greater awareness of myself and as an instrument in therapy. But it's still knowledge, and it's still brings me new things. I'd say I'm a very much someone that likes to celebrate diversity. And in a different way, because I see many people in different kinds of fights against oppression and inequality, and saying that, well, really, we're all the same. And I'd much rather say we're really not the same. We're very different. And that is that different that makes everything more fun. Different is more fun. The same is not fun. The same is boring. And boring is, it's not fun, and it's not interesting, and it doesn't make me curious. The same, we've seen it. So I'm very fascinated how things can be different in every single way, and especially in ways that I had never imagined before. Certainly I'll meet someone that's completely different in a new way that's not like anything. So I very much enjoy that diversity in whatever way. I think kindness is a value. I don't know how much I actually live it. I don't know if I can say I'm the kindest person, but I certainly hope to be and try to be. And it's something I value in the people around me. I have discovered that it is possible to minimize like cohabitation with people that are not healthy, and people that are not healthy for me are people that are not kind. I guess maybe not an easy thing to explain or to define, but yeah, kindness. Yeah, let's see. Yes.
And while you were talking, we were meeting your dog, because I was hearing him breathe and
yes, she's barking. She barks at the neighbors. Yeah.
And then what are some events or set of circumstances that shaped or impacted who you are now? And obviously everything is an event circumstance, but is there something that you feel you want to share?
Certain changes of country, living in one country to another, changing languages, changing professions. I have to say that going into the philosophy department was quite significant for me at the time, because suddenly I was surrounded with people that are very curious people. that might be the one thing that holds them together. Philosophy students or professors or whatever we call them, they are fundamentally very curious people. And so that was very significant for me. And then now just starting psychology undergrad and starting Gestalt training, and just a completely different life, right? It's a different life. What you do, and it's a different life. Circumstances. Yeah, circumstances. Some political issues in Brazil have been quite significant over the last almost 4 years now. Part of, who am I? I'd say I'm Brazilian. And although we're doing this interview in English, I'd say I'm very Brazilian in some ways. Sometimes I forget, and I'm constantly reminded, the more international, especially these Gestalt-y things that we talk a lot about, like ourselves and our personal. And we had a lot of very traumatic political, social tragedies. I don't even know what to call it, just devastating tragedies, which has like a material significance of things that changed, and basically things got more difficult for people where it was already very difficult. But since it was a very violent takeover in a democratic election, there's a lot of disappointment just in everybody. What is happening? So it was very much of a collective shock. It was very much a collective shock of everybody. Everybody's just a lot of crying and a lot of fear and a lot of, I don't know. I'd say it was quite traumatic, and there's certainly a before and after the election in 2018. And that was a significant circumstance. And I think in my entire lifetime, not only in my recent, it was like the unimaginable suddenly. Yeah.
How was that for you, that switch?
Well, I said Brazil is a very polarized country in several different ways, and we'll always have like a love-hate relationship to it. But I'm happy to be Brazilian. Whenever you go anywhere and you say, "Oh, I'm from Brazil," people go, "Oh, wow, from Brazil!" Yay! Suddenly, there's like I don't know. It shifted my inner. The first question, like, who am I? Who am I? Am I Brazilian? What does it mean? What does it mean to be Brazilian from 2018 till today has changed. I think it's changed for everybody in the country. Being Brazilian means something today that it didn't mean 4 years ago. Yeah, that could be a good way of putting it.
And what do you think are the people, or who do you think are the people that impacted you, who you are as a human being, and how?
I thought of a lot of them. This is a question that every time I see an interview, I think of the people in my life, and I think of the people regarding whoever is talking, and in different days, really different people pop up. I have been thinking some about my grandparents. My 4 grandparents were quite significant, the 4 of them, in very different ways. My last grandmother that passed away was I don't know, we talked a lot. We talked about like silly stuff and just mundane stuff that I never really chatted with the rest of the people in my family. And she was someone that I went to when I was in some kind of crisis in my home. So she was like a Porto Seguro. She was just a safe place I could always go to. She was my last grandparents to pass away. She passed away during the pandemic, not of COVID. She was 90 and 92, 92, I think. But she was quite significant in several different stages of my life. My advisor in the university, his name was a perfect name for a philosophy professor. His name was Ulysses Pinheiro. Yes, we had a Ulysses and an Achilles in our
Wow.
we had like the Homer. And at the time, I don't know if I was aware how unique all the investment he put in me was, because we had very regular meets just to discuss things that I was curious about, which is basically, since I mentioned curiosity so much, I had a scholarship during undergrad, which is not an uncommon thing. And it basically means you have like a small presentation once a year, once every 2 years, and you write a small paper. So he was my advisor in undergrad and grad school in my master's. And we studied, and it was my like thing. Like, I want to study the mind-body problem in Spinoza, and I was fascinated by it, and it would give me a headache, and I would think about it all the time. And then we would have regular meets where, I don't know, I've never had anything like it after. And I don't know anybody who's had quite the same kind of dedication. And I went through some difficult personal situation during my master's. And he was also a very caring and understanding and helpful. Not very typical of academia. He was very much a friend in the moment that I needed a friend. So he was quite significant in many different ways, and for a long time. I'd say some friends. I don't know if it is because I mentioned my grandmother passing away. I remembered a friend that also passed away. He was a friend from group therapy. And I met him as well in the moment in my life that I was in, I don't know, a lot of pain, I can say. And we were very, very different as people, like very, very different in age and life and just different, everything different. And yet we shared pain. We identified in our pain. And it was very significant for me going through that moment in my life, having shared pain with with a specific person. His name was Yvon. He passed away, I think, 4 years ago. And he was
So
he was very significant for a long, long time.
can you say more about what it meant for you to share this pain, and what is it that allowed you?
Because it was the same. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, it was so much pain that really we couldn't explain it in words. I couldn't tell you, it was just pain. It's a lot of pain. And I don't know exactly how we communicated, because I talk a lot. He was a very quiet person. He was a very quiet person. He didn't talk very much. He had difficulty, especially in therapy, and since we were in group therapy together, he had difficulty talking about his pain. But it was very mature pain. And it somehow, I do this, it somehow, it spread and it got a little lighter. Just the sharing of it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. It seems like in his pain, he could contain your pain and the other way around. Yeah.
I think he helped me contain my pain and I helped him externalize his. It was very different because we were very, very different. So the exchange was very different, what I gave to him and what he gave to me. He had a very hard time expressing his pain in every possible way. So, yeah. Yeah. I think about him a lot. He's been passed away for a long time. I think about him a lot.
And moving from the people who have impacted you, how do you live or experience your gender?
Yeah. This one is, I've thought a lot about it. It's funny how different, we've talked about this, how different people in different cultures have very different answers to this question. I have to say, I'm very aware of all the gender discriminations and the privileges, but it hasn't really been something that emotionally took a toll on me in any way. And in parts, because I have a very progressive family that has very limited gender roles. I mean, of course, if it's like a structural thing, it's there in everyone in some way. But you could barely, I mean, you can't pinpoint. There's no like male, female stuff that one had to do and the other one couldn't do. And it got me thinking, I was talking about my grandparents. Every woman in my family has always worked. I have 3 grandmothers because my mother's mother passed away when she was a baby. So I have a step-grandmother, which was my grandmother from my birth. So, but I do have the memory of my mother's mother, who was a teacher. My second grandmother was a teacher. My grandmother and my father's side, I don't know, but she also worked. This idea of women, like stay-at-home women, or the limitations of jobs, or I don't know. It's never been very figural for me, not emotionally. Although it is for some people in my family. But for me, I am aware of it, but it's not an emotional issue. I think when I was very little, I wanted to be a boy. I think it would be more fun to be a boy. I think.
Well, do you know why you wanted to be a boy? Do you know?
I like to do, I don't know, I like to do boy things. I don't know if I would have been I'd like to do boy things more than girl things. I'm not a very girly girl in any way as well, so I'm not, I've never had gender stereotypes imposed on me in a significant, in a direct way. So really, it hasn't been an issue.
And going away from gender, how do you experience your age?
I'm happy with my gender and I'm happy with my age, I think. I remember when I was 15, I was sad with my birthdays, like I'm old, I'm 15, I'm 16, I'm 20, I'm old. Like I felt old when I was in my teens and my 20s. I always felt like I was lagging behind somehow. I'm happier today at 39. I'm 39. I'm happier than I was when I was 20. I'm healthier than I was. I'm a whole lot healthier than I was when I was 20. So I don't know. I wouldn't give any of my white hairs away because I know they came with a lot of wisdom that I make use of on a daily basis. So we learn a lot. You know, if that's what you do in your life, we learn very important stuff as we get older. I wouldn't give it back. I don't want to go back to the Maria that didn't know all the stuff that I know today. So I'm quite happy. I spend a lot of time with people that are significantly older than me. Many of them will say, oh, I wish I was 50. So if I complain about my age, I'm a little bit, they get either irritated or offended. So maybe I got used to. That might have influenced my way of thinking that I'm still quite young at 39, 40.
And how do you look at and experience privilege and power in your life?
Yeah, that's the worst one, I think. That's the worst question of them. It's a question that we ask always. I think not for the humans, but it's an ongoing question, and I've always been very much aware of all the privilege of being white middle class in a country like Brazil, where the inequality is so ginormous. But really, privilege is relational. You know, someone has something that someone else doesn't, right? It's a contrast, and we're all going to have certain privileges and not have another, or we can say we're lucky in some things and unlucky in others. It doesn't have to be such a terrible thing unless you have very big inequality. And that's what Brazil is at its most shameful. We were talking about shame before. Privilege is very toxic if the environment is very unequal. So privilege is very toxic in Brazil, and it provokes very intense everything. It provokes very strong reactions, and it's very divisive and just race, income, which is tied up in violence, because violence is spread out also according to race and income. So, that for me, because diversity would mean privilege in some degree. It doesn't have to be a terrible thing. Privilege has become a terrible word. Privilege is a terrible thing in Brazil because we have terrible inequalities. That's what makes it a significant issue.
And power?
Isn't it the same thing? It's not power. Power is kind of toxic. I think power is kind of toxic. It's not good. It's not good for them. Don't we know that as therapists? People that run after power and too much, they're not like happy and satisfied in their lives. Power is just, it's connected to privilege in a strange way. I guess we could think of power as a personal power to face our own difficulties and strides. In that way, it's my own personal power to deal with my own life. I've become much more powerful with age. So that's another reason that I could be happy of my almost 40. I'd say I was much weaker, younger. I had less resources to face difficult situations than I do today. And that could be power as well. Power to live a good and happy life as best you can. That is a privilege. That is a privilege and a power, I guess.
I like that. I like that. And now, rounding this part that is personal and coming to your Gestalt story. How did you come to Gestalt, actually? And I think now, although I know you quite well, I actually don't remember the Gestalt.
Oh, it's a little bit of everything that I've mentioned. So I'm in a psychology undergrad, and half of the training is, not half the training, but half of the time in the undergrad program, you see patients, you see clients. And you have to do this in a certain modality. So it was always like something, well, what am I going to do? I really didn't identify with any of the, I'm psychoanalysis, very Freudian psychoanalysis in Brazil, at least in my Freudian and Lacanian, and I couldn't, or CBT, or I couldn't see it. It didn't make sense to me. None of the modalities were showing up. And then I got the Gestalt therapy course, a small course, only one, right before supervision started, right before we started seeing clients. And the theory was perfect for me because it's very much a theory of what I've been studying my whole life. There are very significant parallels between Spinoza's overall ontology and Gestalt theory. In Gestalt theory, the arguments are very different, but in seeing things as relational, not people, not only people, but like objects, things exist in relation always, is very much a part of Spinoza's philosophy. The mind body being the same thing, which was what I spent 10 years working on. So the theory made a lot of sense, but I didn't know what it would be like in practice, really. But that was the first. Looking back, my therapist, which I didn't know at the time, was a Gestalt therapist. I didn't know. I made a point of not asking because I didn't want to know. I only found out when I started university. She was a Gestalt therapist. She was my therapist for 11 years. Some of the literature, I read Claudio Naranjo's book when I was a teenager. I read it several times. I loved it, the Enneagram book. I've always had a curiosity in Buddhism in some way. I never really went into it because I don't know the language, and I'm not going to become a specialist in Buddhism, but I've always looked into it also from like teenage years. And then I have an incredible supervisor in the university called Helena Vasconcelos. And then suddenly I said, well, this theory, very powerful as therapy. That was just fun. And it was a relief. It was a little bit because I didn't know where I was going to go, and I felt like a little bit homeless. And I thought, well, when I graduate, I'll do my own thing, but I'm going to have supervision in the university under a specific approach. And I was very scared that I wasn't going to find anything that made sense for me. So there was a relief that Gestalt. And then I did an introduction to Gestalt therapy course with Sandra Salomão. And it was an intensive course. She was completely different from Gestalt, from any other Gestalt that I've actually seen in training. She's very confrontational. I don't know, confrontational, but she has like a pearls-like essence. She pushes people quite a bit. She's very careful not to push them over the edge, but she does provoke intensely. And it changed me in a very significant way. And it was right in the beginning of the pandemic. And it's like, wow, This is like powerful stuff. So the theory that was quite philosophical, that I didn't see at the time how the theory connected to what Sandra was doing. And I don't know that I could actually say what it is that she did, but I left her course absolutely decided that Gestalt was the thing. I started thinking of Gestalt in a different way because she has a lot of, she works a lot with experiments. She works a lot with, which is quite different than what I was doing in the university. Yeah. Yeah, she gave me this thing, which is not something that she said, but it's something that I end up saying. I don't know how it's going to sound, but I left the course thinking you can't be a coward psychotherapist. You know, if you're going to ask your clients to go in there and dig deep in the stuff, you have to dig deep in your stuff. You can't be, you know, you can't be scared of facing your own demons. And people talk a lot about how well-resolved therapists have to be, should be, will be, how well-resolved it's possible that they will be. Some people will say that it's the nuttier people that go into the profession in the first place. Some people will say seeing the clients makes people nuttier than they were to begin with. And other people say, well, you have to be very successful at dealing with your stuff in order to be a successful psychotherapist. But what I got is that you have to be brave enough to look at your own issues. That is really hard. And that was like a leap. That was a defining before and after moment as well. And as far as I can look back, every therapist that I admire in some way, both in writing, I know a lot more therapists from books than from like actual people. So both in writing and in people, I'd say that they're the ballsy therapists we talked about. They're people that are not afraid to deal with like the painful stuff of being human, of being alive, of living life one day at a time. So well, that was quite significant. You know, it was like an aha moment. Like a eureka moment. Yeah. Yeah, it was very good.
So you kind of answered the next question, which is what most attracted you by in Gestalt therapy. So maybe you can answer the next one, which is how does or has Gestalt therapy affected you as a person?
Well, that one for sure. To be brave enough to deal with your own unpleasantness and everything else that comes with it. Well, that's the one that comes up. Because as I said, like the whole theory, the theory that we're fundamentally connected, that the thing that Gestalt therapists tend to like care about a lot, that the mind body are the same thing. I had that a lot. I had that for a long time. I developed that with completely different arguments, but a lot of the theory was very internalized already. So what I got from Gestalt therapy was an orientation. I'd say maybe that is very significant. A guidance in my work today. How can I make this profitable for my clients? How can I make this work for my clients in a useful way, in a growth promoting way? And it's become, I think, sometimes it seems kind of strange, but like personal growth kind of becomes a job requirement. I don't know how much that is in other modalities, maybe to some extent. But Gestalt is also very eclectic in how to achieve and how to promote personal growth. So I don't know, the past 2 years I took dancing lessons. I did a clown lab, just drawing, just different kinds of, I become more musical than I had been before. Just going back to valuing different forms of self-expression and self-development in all kinds of different ways. I think that's something that Gestalt is important. Yeah. And a lot of people. I think it brought me in a community of like-minded people, which I didn't have in the psychology department. It's quite frustrating because we were there every day. Nice people that I consider friends. They're very nice. I think some of them will be very good therapists. But we didn't agree in basic stuff. So again, I get very excited about this, and then again, so why are you excited about that? Yeah. So suddenly I found a community of people that get very excited about the same things that I get very excited. And that's also a lot of fun.
I share that very much.
You are one of those people.
At the moment, I don't look excited, and actually, I'm just thinking about how this video will look like, because I am yawning a little bit, but it's not about you and what you're saying. I just want to say that.
Yes, I know it's late for you. I know that. Yeah.
So now that you have mentioned this, do you feel like you're a part of the Gestalt community?
I do. I don't know if I feel like I'm part of all of it. You know, I feel like there are certain people that I feel more connected to, but I feel like the people I am connected to in the Gestalt community, I'm connected to them for similar reasons. So that in itself builds a community kind of yeah.
And what do you think is your involvement in Gestalt as a modality?
Well, my involvement, I don't know. I'm too new. I'm just starting. I say my involvement is with the clients I have today. But I do hope to have more involvement in the future. As I said, like philosophy and psychology and Gestalt, I am a translator, and it's something I didn't enjoy doing, and I'm enjoying it more and more. And it is something that I feel lacking in the Gestalt community in Brazil. And it's lacking. It's something that I would enjoy being able to do. Being able to translate this book just because I want to share it. You know, I love this book. You know, oh yeah, well, translating is a form of book sharing, which is something I love to do. And I didn't think about it that way because it was a job. And as a job, it was boring. But as a way of book sharing, it becomes much more interesting and much more fun.
It's like, you don't want to read it in English? I'll translate it for you, but you have to read it. Please read this.
Yeah. It puts a lot more pressure on the person to read the book once you said, well, I spent 100 hours translating this, so you really have to read the book.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And then what do you think are your greatest memories in Gestalt?
My greatest memories in Gestalt. I don't know. I like it. I dare say it might be. It just might be our meets, our online Gestalt meet with Heather. It's such a different way of thinking about therapy and training as being fun and playful. That our online meets for the Open Gestalt were certainly a highlight. Was that the question? What it was a highlight?
Yeah.
Oh, Sandra's course is very much a highlight. Yeah.
And
Sandra's very much a highlight.
A bit of a polarity to this one. What was maybe your most challenging moment related to maybe therapy and Gestalt?
I'd say Sandra's course. It was very challenging. I was scared of her. I do all the courses that she puts up, but it was very challenging. It was emotionally challenging. But it was very significant. And yeah.
And the last question is, what do you think is next for you and for Gestalt therapy as you see it?
Well, I don't know. I feel like I'm such in the beginning to be able to say what would be next. In the long run, I would love to work with groups. There is a very short supply of group therapy in Brazil. And it's very social. It would fit so well here, especially in Rio. It's very social. People are very social, very connected. But there's very little group therapy. And for me, it was very impactful. And our work in Gestalt, our Gestalt training is almost kind of like group therapy, right? We do like group dynamics. Yeah. But for people that are not in training, there's not very many workshops and just for, everyone else. And I know people who have said, yeah, I would love to do therapy, but just one-on-one for years and years, if there's a thing. So there is a demand for it in some way. Maybe like an isolated demand. I don't know how hard it would be to get people together, but I would love to work with groups. I find groups very, very powerful for transformation. Yeah.
And this is again a personal question, not part of the questions, but I thought I've never asked you this in our conversation, is what do you think is the Portuguese flavor of Gestalt? And what do you think?
I don't know the Portuguese flavor, the Brazilian flavor of Gestalt. Yes. Well, as I said, I think Brazil has a very natural adaptation for Gestalt because just in general, psychology in Brazil is very much body focused. There's a lot of talk of body. It's a playful country in a way. People will think of it as like a party country, but it is a playful. It is playful. It is artistic. I find Rio, I don't know Brazil. I have to speak of Rio because Brazil is just so ginormous. but it is a very musical country, a very creative, artistic. There's like a lot of fertile ground for Gestalt therapy, and there are in fact a lot of Gestalt therapists in Brazil, a lot, and a lot of focus on relations, on the relationship, on the dialogical. I don't know. I have to say from the people that I know, I remember always talking to Heather how much the play and the humor come in. I know two very good clown therapists that are Gestalt therapists, clown therapists. I guess, yeah, we have Gestalt therapy in the arts everywhere in the world, right? It's a common thread in Gestalt therapists that they have quite often professional artistic lives outside of, prior to, alongside their therapy training. I'd say Brazil has that. Yeah, as well. Maybe it wouldn't differentiate it as much. Yeah. Word playful comes to mind, but I don't know how much I could generalize that. I don't know the Brazil, but the small group that I have gotten to know, I'd say they're very dialogical, very much focused on the honest relationship. I can say this is something that brought me to it as well, the authenticity of the therapist. I could never be like an indifferent therapist, like a blank slate, or what a psychoanalyst. I could never do that. And I had something. Well, you talk about yourself to your clients. Well, I don't believe you should do. Well, if you're annoyed, do you say you're annoyed? Well, but the people that know me will know that I don't know how to hide. I don't know. So it's gonna be in my face. So it would be useless for me to attempt to, try to be impersonal or indifferent. So that was another like perfect fit. And I do have people say, "Oh, I don't believe it." Well, people that know me way back when, but sometimes in very unfortunate situations, it's gonna be all over my face. So that's a good match for me in Gestalt as well.
For me as well.
I would say this could be a little bit of a Brazilian. I think Brazilians are more expressive emotionally. In tone of voice and facial expression, in movement. Brazil as maybe something I can generalize. A lot more than North America and European, we're much more outwardly emotional, which sometimes is viewed as a bad thing and sometimes is viewed as. But that makes it a perfect fit for Gestalt, I think, in my view.
So these were all the questions, and I'm wondering if there's anything you want to add to this.
No, that was quite enough. I think I said plenty. That was great.
Well,
thank you. Yeah, thank you.